What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking the top 5 early round players you should reach for in your 2024 fantasy football draft. So sit back, relax, enjoy. If you do, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear it in the comments section. Do you agree, disagree? Who else would you put on this list and why? Along with any other questions you guys might have. We'll do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, let's get into it. As you can see, we've got our 2024 fantasy football draft rankings pulled up here via fantasypros as of mid-July. This is based on PPR scoring, but that's all you need to know, really. And like I mentioned before, these are big names in the first, I would say, 3 rounds that have really nice upside, that we feel good about, that they can outproduce their ADP, and therefore we think are validated if you reach for them. So without further ado, let's kick this thing off, and I am starting with one Garrett Wilson of the New York Jets. He is my wide receiver here that I love to highlight in the first round and a half. He's ranked as the wide receiver 7. He doesn't quite crack the majority of platforms, whether it's FantasyPros, ESPN, Yahoo's tier 1 wide receiver ranking. So what do I mean by that? That's your CeeDee Lambs, your Tyreeks, your Amon-Ra, Jamar Chases. Typically, he is in that AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson, Puka Nacua range. But to me, I think he would be very validated to be right there alongside with an Amon-Ra St. Brown. Hell, ahead of a Justin Jefferson when you consider the quarterback situations on both sides of those teams. But look, it's no secret I was a Garrett Wilson believer last year. Unfortunately, through no fault of his own, Aaron Rodgers goes down pretty much as soon as week 1 starts. And, well, that's all she wrote, because you can only do so much with Zach Wilson as your quarterback. And from that perspective, look, there might be a bad taste in your mouth with Garrett Wilson based on where you drafted him last year, the expectations, and the end result. But the talent is there. The quarterback upgrade is there, again, in Aaron Rodgers. He was talked about, Aaron Rodgers, that is, playing potentially last year if the Jets were in playoff contention. It's been several months since then. So, in my opinion, he is progressing, tremendously. There have been no setbacks, nothing that we've heard of. So it's going to be Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson, the true, duo here in 2024, just a year delayed. And I'm of the camp that Aaron Rodgers still has another year or 2 left in him in terms of high-end quarterback play. The offensive line has been upgraded, a lot of weapons there in general. And I think Garrett Wilson is going to be the next wide receiver in the long line of wide receivers that Aaron Rodgers has catapulted into, stardom. And we've seen the signs with Garrett Wilson. That's the really good thing here. Now, even if you were burned by Garrett Wilson last year, look, it's no coincidence that all these fantasy analysts, including us, have Garrett Wilson still as a borderline first-round pick. Now, from a drafting perspective, where we typically see him go is the end of the first round. Sometimes, depending on the size of your league, he can drop to the second round. Maybe if there's been a big running back run, something of that nature. So to me, that's a tremendous value. I think you're essentially getting a top 5 wide receiver towards the end of the first round. So to me, that's an absolute steal, especially with nowadays in PPR formats, how people are overvaluing, in my opinion, the wide receiver position. But Wilson has everything you could want for him to succeed. He has got a good quarterback, a quarterback upgrade. He has given us the production before. He's going to be the number 1 wide receiver on that team without a question. We've heard the chemistry between him and Aaron Rodgers. You've got a good run game to support, the passing game. It's not one-sided. And again, the offensive line upgrade will also help out the situation, give Aaron Rodgers more time. Garrett Wilson can get it done every which way. He kind of turned into a check down guy last year just because of the quarterback situation, but he can beat you down the field. He can get you those big touchdowns. Everything for Garrett Wilson is going to be elevated this year. Touchdowns, yardage, receptions, everything. So Garrett Wilson to me is a great value as of right now. But let's continue to move on with another guy that I am a fan of. That is Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions. He comes in at running back 4. And I had him maybe a month ago in my tier 3 group of running backs, which was Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, and Jahmyr Gibbs. Tier 2 was Breece, Bijan, and then tier 1 in a tier by himself, Christian McCaffrey. But, we can talk about that another time. The point being is I still see Jahmyr Gibbs right there as a top 5 running back. And sure, I get it. You've got David Montgomery, who will, let's not lie to each other, who will vulture touchdowns. He'll vulture situations. You're not going to have Jahmyr Gibbs be a guy that's getting you 20-plus rushing attempts per game every single week, unless there's an injury to David Montgomery, which is what we saw last year when Montgomery went down for like a week or two. Then Jahmyr Gibbs was an absolute killer, and he did it all. Now, I'm listing Gibbs here on this breakdown primarily because it's based on full PPR scoring. If it was standard scoring, he would be lower on my list. I feel more comfortable reaching for Gibbs in full PPR. I've talked before about the Taylors, the Saquon Barkleys of the world, so I wanted to use this opportunity to shed some light on Gibbs. He's one of the top weapons that the Detroit Lions have. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown, then, it's Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta. I think Gibbs is one of the top pass catchers on that offense. He's a better pass catcher than David Montgomery. And, the Lions became more and more confident with him as the year progressed. He's the younger guy. He's the more explosive guy. And even though David Montgomery was very good last year, and you could still argue, he's the better late round value, Gibbs, in terms of upside, in terms of what running back can finish as a top 5 guy or a top 3 guy in full PPR, he's the one you want to target. He's going to have a high floor because of the pass catching work. Now, again, in standard formats where that doesn't go into the equation as much, it's a different conversation, but we're talking full PPR. He'll still get enough carries, and he's in a high-octane offense, so he will have scoring opportunities. That's what I like. We're targeting guys on high-octane offenses, and I'm still a believer of the importance of the running back position. That's why you're going to see some running back names here. And Jahmyr Gibbs, he reminds me of, potentially a young Alvin Kamara type of guy. Now, as soon as the usage and maybe Montgomery leaves the Lions or something like that, we'll see if Detroit fully gives the reins over to Jahmyr Gibbs. But it's only going to go more in favor of Gibbs because, Montgomery's another year older. Gibbs is, still in that young sophomore season. So he's getting even more experience. And I do think the percentages in terms of usage, in terms of things like that, will sway a little bit more so towards Gibbs this year, but it won't be drastically in that direction. Let's be honest about it. I'm looking at the guys right around here in this range, close to Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, as far as running backs are concerned. I do think that they have higher rushing attempt, rushing yardage, potentially rushing touchdown upside. But since we are talking full PPR, Gibbs definitely has the higher reception and receiving yard upside. So that's what I'm looking for here. And again, on a high-octane offense, doesn't have a quarterback that's going to take away, rushing opportunities away from him, like an Anthony Richardson, like a Jalen Hurts. So to some extent, they're also in quote-unquote competitions in that backfield. So I do like Jahmyr Gibbs. He's going probably in the late first, early second. If you want to have him be the 4th running back drafted after Bijan or Breece Hall, I have zero problems with that. And I am of the mindset that at least 4 running backs belong in the first round of fantasy football drafts in 2024. But now let's continue to move on here. At number 18, we've got Drake London of the Atlanta Falcons, comes in as wide receiver 11. Again, depending on which platform you look at, he could be likely lower than this. And I understand why. But again, all the arrows are pointing upwards for Drake London. I think you've got major breakout potential here for him. And it starts with the quarterback upgrade in Kirk Cousins going to Atlanta. And I said this before, if you're worried about the health of Kirk Cousins, I get it. But, hey, that's why the Atlanta Falcons have got an emergency quarterback. That's still an upgrade over Ritter and Michael Penix Jr. that they got in the first round of the 2024 NFL draft. And he can be that bridge guy until Kirk Cousins returns. And afterwards, Drake London is going to be the top guy here. I mean, he is the top wide receiver, no questions asked. I'm not worried about Darnell Mooney. And Drake London is that big physical guy. He's going to be a big red zone target. And Kirk Cousins is the type of quarterback that is going to air it out. You've got a lot of playmakers on this offense for the Atlanta Falcons. You've unshackled yourself of the Arthur Smith era, which I think is only going to help everyone involved here. So to me, with Kirk Cousins, Drake London's upside will be unlocked. He had some pretty decent games last year. The biggest problem was inconsistency. They were, spread out, and you couldn't count on him to do it week in and week out. Introducing somebody like Kirk Cousins is going to add more consistency here, regardless of how you feel about Kirk Cousins. He's a good fantasy supporting quarterback. We saw what he's done, obviously, with the Justin Jefferson, who I'm not saying Drake London is the next Justin Jefferson, but he's done it with guys like Jordan Addison now, just in 1 year, TJ Hawkinson with the tight end position. So that's why, no coincidence, a lot of people are in on the Atlanta offense, but I didn't just want to say, okay, Bijan Robinson automatically. Let's look at another one of these Atlanta Falcons players. That's why I wanted to focus on Drake London. Then Kyle Pitts is the other name, but he's a lot lower on this list than I would say, obviously, the first 3 rounds. But to me, Drake London has breakout. He's that young, explosive, dynamic wide receiver. The number 1 target, should get a lot of volume, major quarterback upgrade on a high-octane offense. He ticks all the boxes. He's going in the late second round, mid-second round. Sometimes I've seen him go in the third. I would be okay having him as my wide receiver, one kind of banking on that breakout. To me, after Puka Nacua, he is the best, the next best wide receiver. A lot of these other guys have question marks. Devontae Adams, the age, the team, the quarterback, Chris Olave again. Chris Olave, I don't think is ever going to be like that game-breaking wide receiver. He's going to be more of that PPR type of guy that gets peppered. Marvin Harrison, rookie. Michael Pittman, Anthony Richardson. How much is he going to rely on the run? So all those factors, I think Drake London has a good situation for him. Now, let's continue to move on here with another name in Jaylen Waddle of the Miami Dolphins. Another wide receiver, comes in as the wide receiver 16. Typically goes in the early third round, again, depending on where you're drafting, the size of your leagues. I've seen him drop even further. He sets himself up right now ADP-wise to easily be your wide receiver 2, and I think, again, that's really, really good value. I think he can be a low-end wide receiver 1. Now, obviously, he is splitting time opposite Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill will be the number 1 guy in Miami. I'm not going to BS you and say that Jaylen Waddle is going to usurp him all of a sudden. But what Jaylen Waddle does have going for him is now he is healthier than he was last year. So I think that was a kind of a reason why we saw some disappointing performances from Waddle in 2023. Playing opposite Tyreek Hill will open things up for him as well. He is in a high-octane offense. You've got Tua as your quarterback. He's not afraid to sling it. And I think that in full PPR scoring, you're going to have weeks where Jaylen Waddle outproduces Tyreek Hill. It happened 2 years ago. I think it's going to happen again. And, in this scenario where if Tyreek Hill goes down, Jaylen Waddle is the number one wide receiver for Miami. Because right now, if it was Jaylen Waddle as the number one, then, let's say another kind of lower echelon wide receiver opposite him and Tyreek wasn't there, Jaylen Waddle would be going, I think you could argue, a round earlier or something of that nature. So for me, Jaylen Waddle, again, in a good situation. I think he's going to be healthier. I think that the fact that he's going around the third round right now, I would feel comfortable reaching for him, half a round, almost a full round earlier. Again, he's in this range of wide receivers where, I mean, Mike Evans, I get it. Another 1,000-yard season, high touchdown upside, but he's not that PPR guy. Do you really trust Baker Mayfield? Brendan Ayuk, is he even going to be on the 49ers this year? Like trade requests, things of that nature, very crowded room for the 49ers. Marvin Harrison, rookie wide receiver. Again, comparing him to a DJ Moore or a Nico Collins, you like the quarterback situation there, but there are so many targets. Houston, you've got Stephon, you've got Tank Dell. Chicago, you've got Keenan Allen, you've got Roma Dunze and a rookie quarterback. Deebo Samuel, similar situation with Brendan Ayuk. So I think Jaylen Waddle here is kind of the guy that stands out for me. That's why I wanted to highlight him. And then finally, the last name here on our list, we have got one Kyren Williams of the LA Rams. And Kyren Williams comes in here as the 32nd overall player. I've seen him go much earlier. That's why, again, I wanted to complete this list with him as the final name. I've seen him in certain mock drafts go at the start of the second round. I've seen him go ahead of a Saquon Barkley. And in certain rankings, platforms, he is an end of the second round pick. He is an early third round selection. I think if you find yourself in that category, you should be doing backflips that you can potentially get Kyren Williams at that point in time. And sure, the elephant in the room, let's address it. The Rams added Blake Corum. I understand it. He'll get his opportunities, sure, but to me, the starting position belongs to Kyren Williams. Unless there is an injury, Blake Corum is going to be, that change of pace running back. I think that Kyren Williams, he hasn't done anything to lose out the starting running back position. He absolutely dominated last year. He was a fantasy darling. I think he can do it again. Maybe the upside will be a little bit lower, but again, he's on a good offense, good offensive line. As long as Stafford stays healthy, the utilization there, you have to like it. And I think Kyren Williams, after Jahmyr Gibbs, Barkley, and Jonathan Taylor, is the next running back you're probably targeting. I think you could argue he should be ahead of Travis Etienne. I think he's the next closest running back that's next to him, Rachaad White, Pacheco, A-Chain, Derrick Henry. Kyren Williams, younger, good offense. I think some of these guys are propped up by their receiving work or, just the fact maybe Pacheco is with the Kansas City Chiefs. So to me, Kyren Williams has some really nice upside. We saw it last year. Unless there's some major changes, unless there's injuries, I don't think that the situation for Kyren Williams will change too drastically. That's why I still think, again, if you see him being ranked in the 30s, I'd feel comfortable reaching on him in the middle, hell, even the early second round, if you want a top 10 running back at that point in time. There's been a run at the position. But with that, we finish up our breakdown of our top 5 players you should reach for in this 2024 fantasy football season. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comments section, along with any other questions you guys might have. We'll do our best to answer them all. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.